Matthew graduated from a top national university and brags about his career at a major company, constantly hurling insults at me. It seems he feels he did me a favor by marrying me because we had a child on the way. Around the time I was 9 months pregnant, we were invited as a couple to Matthew's cousin's wedding. We stood up to greet Matthew's uncle and his wife as they came to our table, and together with the parents-in-law, we offered our congratulations. After the uncle and his wife moved to the next table, I sat down only to have Matthew suddenly splash beer on me. I was so shocked I couldn't even speak, and Matthew yelled at me.
"Isn't it common sense for the wife to remain standing?"
"Matthew, really?"
"Don't you even know that much? Guess it's because you're uneducated."
Mother-in-law Sarah quickly pulled out a lace handkerchief and wiped my face. As I absent-mindedly watched the drops falling from my bangs, I felt a pierce of anger rising. I couldn't stand it anymore. I didn't care that he was the father of my child. I decided to reveal various things in front of the relatives and hurt his unnecessarily high pride. I'm Dorothy, 42 years old. I met Matthew through work, and he was as charming as an actor. He was competent and considerate, and his gentle, calm manner of speaking was pleasing to the ear. After I developed a good impression of him, he asked me out, and I immediately said yes. A year later, after several days of feeling unwell, I took a pregnancy test, and it came back positive. Since we were dating with marriage in mind, I thought Matthew would be happy to hear the news. Instead, he frowned and answered indifferently.
"Do you want to get married? Okay, then."
There was no proposal, and I felt secretly disappointed. Considering my condition, we decided against a grand wedding, and instead greeted each other's families before registering our marriage at the city hall and starting our life together. Though we were newlyweds, neither of us was young, and with my morning sickness, I had no expectations for a lovey-dovey life. However, I was still taken aback by how different our lives turned out to be. Matthew, who had passed the entrance exams to one of the top universities in the country and graduated straight through, was always full of confidence, partly due to his good looks.
"I want you to quit your job and dedicate yourself to the home. My salary should be more than enough for us, right?"
Before we married, he said this, so I resigned. Or rather, my morning sickness was so bad at the time, I didn't believe I could balance both work and home life. After marriage, his demeaning behavior towards me became more apparent. One day, after using all my energy to make breakfast and hang laundry due to severe nausea, I spent the whole day lying on the sofa. When Matthew came home from work and saw the dust on the floor, he lashed out at me.
"You've been lounging around the house all day, and you haven't even cleaned?"
"I'm sorry. I've been too sick to get up. Could you please buy something from the supermarket next door for dinner?"
"Don't be ridiculous. You want me to eat pre-made food? What if I get sick? I'll give you 30 minutes to make dinner."
Terrified by Matthew's anger, with veins bulging on his forehead, I had no choice but to comply, moving back and forth between the toilet and kitchen to prepare the meal. He complained about the food I made.
"Mom's cooking is much better. Can't even prepare a decent meal, and you wonder why you missed your chance to get married."
Unable to even hold a knife properly, he said such awful things. Even though he himself was marrying for the first time at his age, it was always like this, being complained about. On another day, when I could hardly eat anything due to morning sickness, he said,
"I go to work even with a hangover, but you get to lie down at home? Must be nice."
Since I never talked back, Matthew's behavior grew increasingly arrogant. His arrogance knew no bounds. Of course, I was grateful for Matthew working hard every night, sometimes even going on business trips. But I was thoroughly fed up with being mocked at every opportunity. Once, I managed to budget our limited finances and got my health back to manage the household chores properly. He started mocking my educational background. Matthew loves watching quiz shows on TV, mocking the participants gleefully whenever they make a mistake. Since the airing time overlaps with when I use the kitchen, I often end up being quizzed, and it makes me feel down. He especially enjoys it when students from his alma mater compete against students from other universities.
"Hey, did you get that last question?"
"No."
That's why people who haven't been to college are no good. You should start over from elementary school. He looks proud when his answers are correct. Anyone who gets such an easy question wrong has a brain less than that of a monkey. It's true that Matthew is smart, but the pleasure he takes in looking down on me spoils his brilliance with his nasty character. I'd be in trouble if our kids turn out to be as dumb as you. He said that with a mocking smile, and I had no desire to respond. Moreover, Matthew is quite stingy. He gets mad if I buy a snack for around $1, yet he goes to bars, claiming it's for work, or indulges in expensive wine when he's tired from work. I reluctantly dipped into my savings from before I was married to buy cake or meet with friends and my sister at a cafe while Matthew was at work. You've got yourself a weird man, I vent while having lunch with my sister Melissa. Melissa looked at me with sympathetic eyes. She's constantly traveling for work, so she hasn't yet met Matthew. Unlike me, she's outspoken. He was considerate and had a wonderful smile when we were dating. As soon as you got married, his true colors showed. Hearing this makes me lose the desire to get married. Melissa shook her head, and then, as if she remembered something, said, By the way, I told you there was a reunion back home the other day, right? Yeah, at a local hotel. After the reunion, we were drinking with the usual crowd when a guy came up to us. Oh? Melissa and her friends are glamorous beauties. This guy was handsome but arrogant. Holding a mocha, he said, If you were my woman, you could live in luxury. I'd buy you a condo or anything. Wow, must be rich. He had a wedding ring on his left hand, yet said that. So I asked him if he was married. Guess what he said? What did he say? My brow furrowed. My wife is living off me. I can cheat, spend a fortune on women, and she can't say a word, he said. Ridiculous, right? We laughed it off with my friends, turned him down, and left the place. Which era does he think he's living in? Really, though? I thought to myself that it sounded exactly like something Matthew would say. But I didn't want to worry Melissa, so I kept it to myself. Lately, being with Matthew feels suffocating, wanting to assert his superiority over me, in more than just academics. He started to mock me like this, laughing. You know I married you because we had a baby on the way. You should be thrown away. I'm being kind by providing for you. You should worship me more. You're not grateful enough. Ah, am I like a cat or a dog that's been taken in? Yeah, those animals are probably treated much better. Thinking this makes me feel miserably pitiful. Was all the kindness during our dating days a lie? But maybe Matthew will change once the baby is born. Holding on to that faint hope, I couldn't bring myself to consider divorce. As the 9-month mark approached, we were invited to Matthew's cousin's wedding as a couple. My condition had stabilized, and since it was at a nearby hotel, we decided to attend. I was looking forward to the splendid occasion and went with excitement. When the ceremony began, I was completely captivated by the bride's radiant beauty standing next to the groom. How beautiful! I wished to wear a dress like that someday. Then Matthew laughed mockingly next to me.
Better not. It'll just make your ugly face stand out more.
He whispered at a volume low enough that the parents-in-law at our table couldn't hear. There's no need to say it like that.
Maybe if you lose a lot of weight and get plastic surgery and look 20 years younger, then I might let you wear one.
While listening to the wedding march, I bit my lip and looked down. Why do I have to be spoken to this way? Unaware of my sinking mood, the ceremony proceeded smoothly. After the toast, it was time for the bride and groom to change outfits. The atmosphere in the venue remained pleasant as tables started engaging in small talk. Soon after, Matthew's uncle and his wife came to our table to greet us. We stood up to welcome them, returning their congratulations. After the uncle and his wife moved to the next table, I followed my parents-in-law and sat down. The moment I sat down, something cold splashed on my face. I had been doused with beer. I was so shocked I couldn't speak, and Matthew yelled at me.
A wife is supposed to stand. Isn't that common sense?
Matthew, really?
You're supposed to stand until you've visited all the tables. Don't you even know that much? This is why the uneducated. What are you talking about? Sit down, Dorothy.
I'm sorry. He seems to be mistaken. Father-in-law Daniel spoke up, and mother-in-law hurriedly took out a lace handkerchief and wiped my face. As I absent-mindedly watched the drops falling from my bangs, I felt a fierce anger boiling up inside me. I couldn't stand it anymore. It didn't matter that he was the father of my child. I was ready to reveal various things in front of the relatives and hurt his unnecessarily high pride. Someone had been silently watching Matthew yell at me. She had been sitting at the bride's friend's table and came running over the moment Matthew sat down.
Yes?
I knew it. You're the guy who approached us at the hotel bar the other day. Melissa, what's going on? Oh, it's true. The man who hit on us despite wearing a wedding ring? Matthew turned pale at Melissa's accusation. Loud enough for other tables to hear, Melissa's friend Linda exposed him. Let me say, what was it? Become my woman and you can live in luxury? I'll buy you a condo or anything? My wife lives off me, I can cheat, spend a fortune on women, and she can't say a word? That's what he said. Your wife is pitiful. Wait, Dorothy. Melissa's sister is that man's wife? Why is Melissa here? Oh, a friend of the bride. Melissa, who had brought her friends from the same table, feigned exaggerated surprise at seeing me. Though it was all an act, it shocked Matthew, so everything was going according to plan. The parents-in-law looked bewildered, comparing Melissa and her friends with Matthew.
Did you hit on women even though you're married? Come on, Dad, don't believe their nonsense.
Matthew, sweating profusely, tried to make excuses. It's hard to ignore this. My sister and her friends are lying. I confronted Matthew. If you think it's a lie, shall we check the date and time? It matches exactly with when you were away on a business trip. Matthew's face contorted at the date and time mentioned by Melissa and her friends. It was indeed when Matthew was away on a business trip. This man is incredibly stingy, gives me hardly any living expenses, even though he works at a big company and earns a good salary. And he's about to be a father, but only thinks about his own enjoyment. Even if he's handsome, it's despicable. Laughed at by Melissa's friends, Matthew turned red and looked down. My parents-in-law looked at Matthew with dismay. Matthew, what are you doing as the head of the family? Don't embarrass us.
It's not like that, Mom. Dorothy, do something.
What do you want me to do? Melissa and her friends are just stating the facts. I coldly dismissed him, and Matthew's eyes bulged with rage.
If you say it's the truth, then show me the proof. Did you record my words or something? You didn't.
At his words, Melissa's friends fell silent. After watching them quietly return to their table, Matthew glared at me.
So, you were planning to embarrass me with your sister? Setting up that woman at the hotel I was staying at during my business trip?
How can I possibly do that when I don't even know which hotel you would be staying at?
It's you, isn't it? You must have checked. Fine. Remember this when we get home.
As the bride and groom made their re-entry, I ignored Matthew's words and focused on the newlyweds. It was time for the bride and groom to visit the guest tables. They were supposed to perform the candle service, lighting candles. Suddenly, I noticed Matthew, who had been exploding in anger, now laughing as he gazed at the bride. The bride, Patricia, unnaturally turned her face away from Matthew. As they were leaving, Matthew inexplicably moved his glass of beer closer to the bride, Patricia, and spilled beer on her dress.
Sorry, my hand slipped.
Matthew, really? This is troubling. It's a rental. The bride lamented, to which Matthew quickly offered.
I'm so sorry. It's best to wash it immediately, right? How about I accompany you to the bathroom so John can continue visiting the tables alone? No. It's weird to split up during the wedding. I'll go with her. Don't be shy. It would be bad if it doesn't end with the scheduled time.
But John, the groom, hesitated next to the bride, who looked troubled. That's when I offered some advice. Was it John? You shouldn't leave them alone. Matthew was hitting on Patricia just now. I saw it. John's eyes widened.
Wait, are you serious? Dorothy, stop spreading nonsense. Stop saying weird things.
Matthew cried out in a panic.
What's going on here? Are you trying to ruin the happy atmosphere?
I don't enjoy this either, but Matthew, you're the one who caused it. I looked up at the bride and said firmly, Patricia, is better to speak up early. Don't just endure it. Encouraged by my words, the bride looked determinedly at John and began. John, Dorothy's right. When I went to the bathroom earlier, Matthew hit on me. The bride continued as John was taken aback. John and Matthew, you've been friends since childhood, right? I kept quiet because I thought revealing this might ruin your relationship. But why should I have to endure this? The bride glared at Matthew and said in a stern tone, I remember every word he said. I'll tell everything.
Stop.
Ignoring Matthew's interruption, the bride spoke out loud for everyone to hear. He said things like, I'm smarter than John, work at a better company. Being my wife would be more beneficial for you. Just contact me after your honeymoon. Between what he said to Dorothy's sister and her friends, he really has no morals. Matthew covered his mouth with his hand, panicking as he looked back and forth between the angry faces of the bride and groom.
John, you wouldn't believe such a woman, right? We're best friends, aren't we? Forgot all those times we played together as kids?
John coldly retorted to Matthew's rapid speech.
Of course I trust her. I knew about Matthew's bad habits with women, but hitting on the bride? That's messed up. Even if I'm just average, I'm a better person than you.
The venue started buzzing as John's painful voice echoed. Relatives who understood the situation began to criticize. Matthew's handsome and was expected to succeed in our family, but he's always been arrogant. Over 40 and still behaving like that. No matter how smart, he's the worst, a disgrace to the family. Matthew turned red up to his neck.
What an awful cousin, John. Maybe you should cut ties with him. John is way cooler than that old man. Shut up.
Matthew stood up, yelling loudly enough to fill the venue.
It was just a joke with the bride. You took it seriously. I was testing her to see if she'd easily flirt with other men. Good thing she's not a man-eater. You should thank me.
Oh, yeah, sure.
John laughed at Matthew's outburst.
I'm here, giving you the honor of my presence. Forget it. This wedding's a waste of time. Dad, Mom, Dorothy, we're leaving.
You're free to leave if you wish, I told him, and Matthew looked surprised. I looked straight at Matthew and declared firmly, I won't return to that room. I will not live with you anymore. I really wanted to hand him divorce papers right then, but doing so at a wedding would be inappropriate, so I planned to send them later. I don't want to see your face anymore. Leave quickly. Staying any longer would trouble everyone else. After saying this clearly, Matthew erupted in anger. Unable to bear being defied by his usually submissive wife,
You, taking a father away from his child? No mother as low as you could raise a child properly. Leave if you want, but the child stays with me.
I won't hand over this child to you.
Then I'll hire a lawyer and fight. A capable man like me will surely win.
How is a father like you in any way advantageous? You're still as delusional as ever. Shaking my head in disbelief, Melissa, who had been silent until now, stepped forward and handed Matthew a business card. I work in this field in case you're interested. I can introduce you to someone. Matthew's eyes widened as he looked at the business card Melissa handed him.
Head of the office? From that major firm?
You knew that. As expected, quite knowledgeable. Melissa smiled.
I didn't know your sister was a lawyer. Why didn't you tell me?
I smiled thinly. Oh, did you want to know? I thought it might hurt your unnecessarily high pride. Then Melissa chimed in. Just to correct what Matthew might be misunderstanding, Dorothy didn't go to college because she prioritized recovering from an illness over continuing her studies abroad. She had been accepted to a university in England. Such a waste. Well, I never mentioned it because it's not something to boast about. My eldest brother and older brother went to universities in England, and Melissa graduated from H University. Quite international, right? Matthew looked at me as if I were an alien.
That's impossible. Dorothy can't answer a single question on quiz shows.
Because if I did, it would hurt your pride. Belittling me daily because you think you're smarter is what you live for. I looked at Matthew with pity. I know all those answers. Maybe next time I'll give you the answers before they're revealed on the show. Matthew, gaping like a fish, received my final blow. I just hope our child doesn't end up as foolish as you. Exposed to the icy stares of me, Melissa, the bride and groom, and both families, Matthew must have felt unbearable. He twisted his face in frustration and fled, followed by the parents-in-law, to the laughter of the guests. After Matthew and the parents-in-law left, the wedding was canceled. The bride and groom decided to hold a reception later just for friends, apologizing for ruining the special day. But John forgave them easily.
I'm partly to blame for inviting Matthew. Don't worry about the money. We'll make sure he pays.
As I declared, I moved back to my parents' home after the wedding. I had considered staying in a hotel until finding a new place, but my family insisted on hosting me. After arranging for movers and sending Matthew the compensation claim and divorce papers, I received a call the next day.
Why should I pay compensation? I was just disciplining my wife. You're going to raise a child on your own, right? I won't pay child support.
I took the phone away from my ear and calmly responded, Oh, is that so? Then we can settle this in court, which will cost you more. You can have that condominium. Just give me half its value. Compensation and appraisal value, all in one payment. Ignore this and I'll sue. Good luck.
Please, Dorothy, spare me the compensation. I have to pay John too, and together it'll drain my savings.
I was fed up with Matthew's pathetic voice. You made me save so much, yet you're saying your savings will vanish due to compensation? Perhaps you spent it on other women. Matthew fell silent. I hit the nail on the head. I wasn't even angry. I had set up the compensation high, anticipating this. Eventually, Matthew gave in and transferred the compensation to my account. Later, I heard from a friend that a coworker of Matthew's attended the wedding and spread the word about his actions at the company. Losing his boss's trust, Matthew was transferred to a less significant department, and his salary was significantly cut. Though he was popular among female coworkers for his work, he lost his appeal the moment he veered off the elite track. Matthew's confidence plummeted, and he quickly aged. Once handsome, he now looked pitiful with disheveled, graying hair and a sagging suit. Whenever he approached female coworkers, they screamed and ran away. I safely gave birth to a healthy boy, and with Melissa's help, raised him without returning to my hometown. We moved to the condominium bought with the compensation, and I started working at Melissa's office while my child attended a child care center. So far, child support has been promptly deposited every month. I threatened to garnish his wages if he defaulted, which seemed effective. Next time, I hope to find someone far better than Matthew, who will adore my child. Without a father, I plan to pour twice the love into raising my child with care.